Every morning, Mr. Turner started his day by driving the big yellow school bus through the quiet streets of Maplewood. He had been a bus driver for over 20 years and knew all the kids by name. He smiled and waved at parents, greeted the children with a kind word, and kept a small jar of candy for those who needed a little cheering up. But recently, he had noticed something strange. A little girl named Emma, who always sat in the same seat near the back, had started crying every day. She was about 9 years old, quiet, with long brown hair and big eyes that looked sad. At first, Mr. Turner thought maybe she was just having a tough morning or missed her mom, but it didn't stop. Every day, as the bus rolled through its route, he'd glance in the mirror and see her wiping tears from her cheeks. Sometimes she tried to hide it, turning her face toward the window, but the sniffles gave her away. Mr. Turner didn't want to make her feel worse by calling her out in front of the other kids, so he tried to speak to her gently. "You okay back there, Emma?" he asked one morning when the bus was quieter than usual. She quickly nodded and forced a small smile, but it disappeared as fast as it came. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just a bad day. He thought about talking to the school, but he wasn't sure what to say. He didn't have proof of anything, just a feeling deep in his gut that something wasn't right. Days passed, and the crying continued. Emma never seemed hurt physically, but her sadness was hard to ignore. It clung to her like a heavy coat. Then, one rainy Thursday morning, Mr. Turner dropped off the last of the children at school, but he noticed something unusual. When Emma got off the bus, she looked over her shoulder nervously, almost like she was checking to see if anyone had noticed something. She stepped off quickly, her backpack held tightly against her chest. After she was gone, Mr. Turner parked the bus and walked toward the back, his eyes scanning the empty rows of seats. When he reached Emma's seat, he noticed a small piece of paper tucked under it. He bent down, curious, and picked it up. The note was folded carefully, like it had been hidden on purpose. When he opened it, his heart skipped a beat. It was a simple drawing made with crayons, a picture of a girl sitting alone with big tears falling from her eyes. Around her were shadows, tall and dark, and in the corner of the page, a sad face peered out from behind bars drawn like a cage. There were no words, but the message was clear. This wasn't just sadness. This was a cry for help. Mr. Turner stood frozen for a moment, the paper trembling in his hand. He looked around the bus, suddenly seeing it with new eyes. What had been happening under his nose while he focused on driving and keeping the route on time? Why had Emma drawn this and hidden it? Was she hoping someone would find it? He didn't know for sure, but he was certain of one thing. He couldn't ignore this. With his heart pounding and the note still in his hand, he walked off the bus and headed straight for the school office, knowing he had to speak up before it was too late. Mr. Turner walked quickly through the school hallways, holding the drawing carefully in his hand. The bell had just rung, and students were already in their classrooms. The quietness made everything feel more serious. He reached the main office and asked to speak to the school counselor, Mrs. Jensen, who was known for being kind and good with children. When she saw the look on Mr. Turner's face and the paper he held out, she invited him into her office right away. He showed her the drawing and explained everything. How Emma had been crying every day, how she always sat in the same seat, and how he had found this hidden under it. Mrs. Jensen studied the drawing with concern and nodded slowly. "You did the right thing by bringing this to me," she said gently. "Something's clearly wrong, and we'll look into it right away." While Mrs. Jensen promised to handle it carefully, Mr. Turner still felt uneasy. Emma had been hiding this pain for who knows how long. He wondered what kind of home she returned to each day and what those shadowy figures in the drawing meant. That afternoon, he watched Emma as she got back on the bus. She avoided his eyes and went straight to her seat, holding her backpack tightly again. Mr. Turner wanted to say something, but he didn't want to scare her or make things worse. He simply gave her a gentle nod and started driving the usual route. But now, his eyes flicked more often to the mirror, watching her, hoping she would be okay. The next few days passed quietly. Emma still cried sometimes, but she seemed less scared, like maybe she knew someone had seen her message. Mr. Turner kept checking under the seat after each drop-off, just in case she left more drawings or notes, but nothing else appeared. Still, he remained alert, and so did Mrs. Jensen. She had begun asking Emma to come in for quiet talks during lunch, offering her snacks and coloring pages. At first, Emma barely spoke, only nodding or shaking her head. But then one day, she whispered, "I don't like going home." That one sentence opened the door. Slowly, day by day, Emma began to share more. She told Mrs. Jensen about the yelling, the long nights when she wasn't allowed to sleep, and the strange visitors that made her feel scared. She didn't understand everything that was happening around her, but she knew it wasn't normal. She said she tried to be quiet and invisible, so she wouldn't get in trouble. The cage in her drawing was how she felt, trapped and forgotten. Mrs. Jensen listened with tears in her eyes and took careful notes. She followed the correct steps and contacted Child Protective Services. An investigation began quietly, with officials visiting Emma's home to speak with her parents and neighbors. Meanwhile, Mr. Turner continued to drive the bus each morning and afternoon, trying to act normal for the kids, but thinking about Emma the whole time. He wondered if he had done enough, and if she would ever be safe. One Friday afternoon, just before the weekend, Emma didn't show up for the bus. Mr. Turner waited a few extra minutes, worried she might be sick or worse. But then he saw Mrs. Jensen walking toward him with a small smile. "Emma won't be riding the bus today," she said softly. "She's been placed in temporary care with a kind foster family while the investigation continues. She's safe for now." Mr. Turner let out a deep breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Relief flooded through him, but so did sadness. Emma had gone through so much before someone noticed. All those days, she sat quietly crying while the world moved around her. He looked at the empty seat where she always sat and knew he would never forget her or the drawing she left behind. Something told him this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. A few weeks passed, and the bus felt different without Emma. Mr. Turner still looked at her empty seat every day, half expecting to see her there again. The other kids didn't ask much about her. Maybe they didn't notice how sad she had been, or maybe they just didn't understand what had really happened. But Mr. Turner couldn't stop thinking about her. He often wondered how she was doing, if she was happier now, and if she felt safer in her new home. He kept in touch with Mrs. Jensen, who gave him quiet updates whenever she could. "Emma's adjusting," she said one day. "It's not easy, but her foster family is gentle with her. She's starting to smile again." That made Mr. Turner feel better, but he still felt like there were pieces of the story missing. The drawing had shown something deeper. Those shadowy figures and the cage had seemed almost symbolic, like there was more than just yelling at home. He couldn't forget that part. One morning, he drove past the street where Emma used to live, and he saw police cars parked outside. It made his stomach twist. Something was happening. He later found out that her parents had been arrested for neglect and suspected abuse. Neighbors had come forward during the investigation, revealing that they'd heard things, but had been too afraid to speak up. Some said they heard loud fights every night. Others said Emma was left alone for hours while strange people came and went from the house. It became clear that Emma had been living in a very dangerous situation. Hearing all this made Mr. Turner feel angry and helpless. How could this happen in their quiet little town? How could so many people have missed the signs? But then he remembered. It was Emma who had asked for help in the only way she knew how. She had drawn her pain on that piece of paper and hidden it, hoping someone would find it. And because of that one small action, everything had started to change. Mr. Turner found himself feeling proud of her. She had been brave in the face of fear. Not long after that, Mrs. Jensen invited Mr. Turner to come to a school meeting about student safety and awareness. She told him they were using Emma's story, without saying her name, to help train teachers and staff to recognize silent signs of distress. Mr. Turner sat quietly during the presentation, listening as counselors talked about how children don't always ask for help with words. They show it in other ways, through behavior, through drawings, through silence. The note Emma left under the seat had become a powerful example. When it was Mr. Turner's turn to speak, he stood up slowly and looked around the room. "I just drive the bus," he began. "But every child I see is someone's world. When you notice a change in a child, even something small, it matters." Emma cried for days. and I kept thinking she'd stop, that maybe she was just tired or sad. But she didn't stop. And when I found that drawing, it broke my heart. I didn't know what it meant at first, but I knew it wasn't nothing. Please, don't ignore the small signs. Kids are trying to tell us things even when they can't say them out loud. The room was quiet for a moment after he spoke. Then people began to nod, and a few even wiped away tears. After the meeting, several teachers came up to thank Mr. Turner. Some told him they would pay more attention now. Others said they had been reminded of kids they were worried about. Mr. Turner felt humbled, but also hopeful. Emma's quiet cry for help had turned into something bigger. It was reaching others, changing how people looked at the children around them. And that, he thought, was the most important thing of all. Several months went by, and the seasons began to change. The trees lost their leaves, and snow started to fall across Maplewood. The school bus rolled through the streets as always, with children laughing and chatting inside. Mr. Turner kept his eyes on the road, but his heart often drifted to thoughts of Emma. He still checked under the seat sometimes, not for notes, but as a habit he couldn't shake. The memory of that little crayon drawing had stayed with him, as clear as the day he found it. He often wondered if Emma would ever return to school, and if she did, whether she would ride his bus again. Then one cold morning in January, something unexpected happened. As Mr. Turner reached the last stop on his route, a car was already waiting there. A woman stepped out, smiling warmly, and opened the back door. A girl with long brown hair climbed out slowly, bundled in a thick red coat and holding a small lunchbox. Mr. Turner blinked in surprise. It was Emma. She looked different, still the same little girl, but her eyes no longer seemed so heavy. Her shoulders weren't hunched anymore. She walked with quiet confidence and even waved shyly at him before stepping onto the bus. He smiled, touched his cap, and greeted her softly. "Good morning, Emma. It's good to see you again." She gave a small smile in return and sat in the same seat she used to, near the back. Mr. Turner glanced at her in the mirror as he drove, just like he used to, but this time he saw no tears. She looked out the window, peaceful, and he could almost feel the difference in the air. When they reached the school, the children filed off the bus as usual, but Emma lingered for a moment. She walked up to him, her eyes thoughtful, and held out a folded piece of paper. For a second, his heart stopped. Was it another cry for help? He opened it gently, and this time, he saw a bright picture drawn in colored markers. It showed a smiling girl standing next to a big yellow bus, with the sun shining in the corner. In the drawing, the girl was holding a sign that said, "Thank you." Mr. Turner stared at it for a moment, then looked at Emma. "Did you draw this?" he asked. She nodded. "For you," she said quietly. "Because you saw me." Tears welled in his eyes, but he quickly wiped them away and smiled. "You're very brave, Emma. I'm proud of you." As she headed off toward the school building, Mr. Turner placed the drawing on the dashboard. It stayed there for the rest of the year, a reminder of what one small voice could do. Word of Emma's return spread quietly through the school. Teachers welcomed her with warmth and patience. Her new foster family came to school events and supported her every step. Emma began to make friends, joined a small art club, and even entered one of her drawings in a local contest. It won first place. Though she didn't talk much about her past, those close to her could see she was healing. And Mr. Turner continued his job with more care than ever. He paid attention to every child's face, every change in behavior, every small signal. He knew now that even the quietest whisper could mean the world. Emma had changed his life in a way he never expected. Sometimes, when he parked the bus after his route, he would sit in silence for a few minutes, looking at her "thank you" drawing. It reminded him that what he did mattered. And somewhere out there, a little girl who used to cry quietly was now smiling, drawing, and starting over, because someone had taken the time to look under the seat and listen when no one else did.